Hey, what's up, guys? Just some anecdotes. 20 years since 9/11. I did a video last year around this time, but I figured I'd give some anecdotes. Um, when it happened, the day before, there was a big storm. People probably remember big rainstorm. Where I was upstate with my girlfriend, staying at a relative's house, and the cable got knocked out. So um, I was going to work to Manhattan. Pretty much Monday I was off. We stayed an extra day. Um, Stayed Monday, and I was gonna go down Tuesday. I was gonna drop my girl off at the subway. It was earlier in the day, so I felt better about her going home by herself. Um, and We had a great weekend. It was such a great time. I had met her that year. It was September. It was cooling off. Halloween was coming. I was gonna have Halloween with my girl. She never really got to do Halloween because she was Chinese and a Christian. But then she met my pagan ass, right? Her parents were thrilled with me, by the way. I had hair down to my back then. And I was coming out of a leftist phase. I was becoming kind of like the Lumpanic's Paladin Press right-wing libertarian dude, right? Anyway, just getting ready for work. I was gonna drive down to Manhattan, and I had the radio on. There was no TV, and the radio told me that a plane had hit one of the towers. I was like, oh damn. I said, oh shit, I'm gonna be late for work probably. I bet you the traffic's gonna be backed up all on the West Side Highway coming up from the Hudson Valley, down through Westchester and the Bronx, right? Thought it was a Cessna or something, right? Then as I was listening to the radio, putting my shirt on, and then the people on the radio were like, oh my god, another plane hit the other tower. And at that point it was like, oh, okay, don't laugh. Oh, this don't sound kosher. And then the rest of the day we stayed up there. It was pandemonium. I remember my mother, I was talking to her on the phone. The phones were working. I didn't have a cell phone. I used the phone there. And she was saying, why aren't you going to work? I said, Mom, there's something going on. Right? And she was, what? Like she wasn't paying attention. And then it was horrible. Listening to the radio, towers were falling in on themselves. People were jumping out so they wouldn't burn alive. My girlfriend was crying. I'll never forget her crying. I thought she was a misanthrope like me, but she was crying. I was punching the walls, angry. Obviously, that day, there was no planes in the sky, right? Except for F-16s. And it was crazy. I said, yeah, I can't stand this anymore. I took my girl. We went to the Walmart nearby, to see the television because we didn't have the TV. Wasn't working. It had been knocked out. And then we saw it. And I remember we went to the electronics department and still had the TVs were tube TVs, and just over and over, boom, boom, and the thing collapsing, So the next day they called me up. I called my job up. They're like, yeah, we need you to come in. I worked in Manhattan on the west side, 57th Street. And I said, what? Wait a minute. Giuliani said that we weren't supposed to come in. That everything was closed. The bridges were all closed. They weren't letting anybody in. And they're like, we need you. So I'm like, all right. The trains are still running. I said, I'm going to be late, though. I got to take my girlfriend home first. So I drove home, went down through the Bronx, through the Whitestone, into Queens, where she lived. And just on the approach, you just saw this friggin' plume of smoke going up miles into the sky. And it was like, holy shit. I dropped her off. Her parents were terrified, right? But I brought their daughter home safe, drove back to Brooklyn, took the subway because you couldn't get into the city, right, with the car. Got there, and the Manhattan Bridge, it's, right there. You see Lower Manhattan right there. It was just smoke going up. I was just like, oh, what the fuck am I doing? The job I did didn't make sense for me to come in because we depended on shipments of stuff coming in, and there was nothing coming in anyway. Whatever. When I get out of the station now, it's about 57th Street, so it's not Lower Manhattan, but that's a couple of miles away, and you can still smell. That smell, man, that burning smell. Um, and people walking around on the street were like in a daze, like zombies. I'll never forget that. Went there, didn't do nothing. All we did was listen to the radio at work. No, nothing came in, right? Um, and that night, I went to take the subway home, and every fucking asshole in the New York area called in a bomb threat, and they shut the subways down. I didn't get home till like 5 in the morning. Yeah, so. uh, I remember too when it had happened. I had said, "This is what we get for helping a certain country." I'll leave it at that. Back then, because I was a leftist, I didn't like that country, and I didn't like this country. How ironic. Um, so other anecdotes. Yeah, I remember that Friday. There was a whole thing that went out to put candles up everywhere. I was at work. I remember we sang the national anthem, and most of us didn't know the words. I remember seeing a really crazy cloud formation that looked like a nuclear mushroom cloud. But I remember leaving, going home, and seeing the the candles. It was just so beautiful. It was the most beautiful thing I ever seen in my life. I'll never forget. From Brooklyn to Manhattan to where I live to the building I went to, the porch. There was candles everywhere. I'll never forget that. Other things I'll remember too. I remember a couple of months before, when I was with my girl, we went down to Baltimore, yeah, to go to the Comic Con, Anime Con they had there. I remember. And I said, I'm in Baltimore. Let me visit this dude whose book I read. This guy named James LaFont. So that's where I met James. So I had met James just a couple of months after I met my girl. Right? And the bus we took came out of the World Trade Center. So we were at the World Trade Center about 2 months before. I think it was July. And there was a firehouse there. And there were some dudes, firefighters hanging out when we were waiting. I assume all those guys are fucking dead, right? And there was a Burger King there, and I'll never forget when I would drive past later. The Burger King had survived. Isn't that crazy? A couple of weeks that night. Oh, that night I remember when I finally got the subway back. There was a Muslim guy talking about like, oh, they were killing Muslims in retaliation for this, right? Yeah, he was a Nation of Islam dude, right? Wasn't a ethnic Muslim, let's say. And all he could think of was just seeing how his people were the victims. And I remember the other dude, this guy, this Irish American guy, crying because his cousin and his big brother were firefighters. Dead or not, he had no idea. So he started crying. It was like 4 in the morning, and I'm on the train, and I'm just like listening to all these people. Got one guy being all self-righteous and the other one crying over his family members being dead. I was just gritting my teeth the whole time. Then a couple of weeks later, I remember the anthrax stuff, and I'll never forget my girl. She said, yeah, in the Chinese community, right, tight-knit in New York, they were basically saying, yeah, a Chinese woman who's a postal worker, she died from some powder in a thing. And I remember I said, Dora, I didn't hear about that. I didn't hear about that. That couldn't have happened. And she looked at me with this look like, yeah, okay, yeah. No one cares about the Chinese. I remember she said it like, oh, and she's like, yeah, nobody, yeah, whatever. Like, I remember she looked at me kind of like, yeah, all right, don't believe me, asshole. And then a week later, it all came out. I'll never forget that. Okay. Other things I'll never forget too. Was then I remember all the everybody was a flag waver all of a sudden. Now I was never comfortable being a flag waver for different reasons. So every liberal people were waving the flag. You had those plastic flags that you would put in your car window. And I don't know. There was some instinct into me. I wanted to be patriotic too. But I don't know. There was just something in me that was like, all right, well, you know what? I did become patriotic, but I wasn't gonna wave the flag. It was hard to explain that. And then the next 2 years was the build up to the Iraq War, and I couldn't. I was someone who came from a left wing background, but I for a second I bought some of the arguments that the neocons, and I knew what fucking neocons were too, and even I was like, well, this went too far, this and that. Yeah. So now look at all these years later, right? In Brooklyn, at least the area of Bensonhurst, where I was, where I live next to, and in kind of, there's more Muslims than everywhere. Islamic centers. Even in Staten Island, they're building a huge one, right? Whatever. But we all know that that's, it's the machinations of others that I have an issue with. Giuliani, who was the hero of 9/11, America's mayor. I mean, it was overstated to a degree, and Giuliani was what he was. But I remember Chuck Schumer and the carpetbagger Hillary Clinton. She was a New York senator. Remember, a year before she had been elected. I remember these idiots. They couldn't put two sentences together, and Giuliani was there. Being in control, right? Regardless. But look how he's being treated now. Right? I still don't like Giuliani, to be honest. But now, I'm trying to think of other things, other little anecdotes I can do before this goes. I remember about 2 weeks later, a friend of mine was performing at a place. It was called Don Hills, if anyone remembers it. And I said, let me support this person. So I went to Canal Street. I'll never forget getting off the station, Canal Street, Chinatown, going to the west side. There was the south of Canal Street was literally a demilitarized zone. You had barriers everywhere. You had Humvees. You had soldiers, American Army guys everywhere with weapons, checkpoints. And I remember there was a place that became like a way station for who? For all the construction workers at Ground Zero, what they were calling it, Ground Zero. I remember they were there trying to do something, trying to help, union guys, steel workers, and this and that. Right. And I remember saying I should help, but that part of me was like, what am I gonna do? Wow. In retrospect, how many of those guys died of like multiple cancers? I met a lot of those guys in the next 10 years. By the way, I won't say why, but I remember all these dudes going there to help, trying to do something, patriotic, working class men dying of cancers. Okay, and I'll never forget also Governor Christine Todd Whitman, a Republican. She was governor of New Jersey, then she became the EPA director under the Bush administration, saying that everything was fine at Ground Zero. The air quality was fine. Everything was good. Meanwhile, I remember driving on Chambers Street and seeing all the lines of people that were going there who were sick, going to like these medical things they set up, right? So I remember this bitch saying that it was safe, and I remember my instinct telling me, bullshit. And it turned out to be right. 10 years, 15 years later, all these dudes dying of different cancers. And I'll never forget that either. There's whole lot more I can say, At this point, the official story of 9/11, I don't believe a damn word of it. So, also I didn't mention even like the Pentagon got hit. Really, they got hit. And of course, out in Pennsylvania, Western Pennsylvania, you had that thing. I haven't even been by there. I haven't even been by the Ground Zero Memorial. No desire to be there. The city has changed beyond recognition. Even 5 years ago, they were saying like half the people that live in the city now, or more than half, were not there when 9/11 happened. Okay. I have my own opinions of it. Obviously, everything that happened since then, you can use it as a marker. Right, the end of history. All I can say is that 20 years ago, whatever happened, it almost doesn't matter now when you see, other than the people that lost people there, who I feel for. People jumping to their deaths instead of burning alive. But in terms of who, why, what, when, don't even ask me what I really think at this point. You wouldn't want to know later.